Hello, my name is Jacqueline Hargreaves. I'm a yoga practitioner as well as an independent researcher who enjoys studying the contemporary meeting place between historical practices of yoga and their application in a modern, mainly therapeutic environment. In 2011, I founded the Luminescent for sharing the rich history and diverse practice of yoga with the broader community in the form of open access articles and visual material. My main aim was to offer yoga practitioners, more specifically teachers, access to evidence-based research from the emerging field of yoga scholarship. I started this initiative with my husband, Dr. Jason Birch of the Hatha Yoga Project, in reaction to the poor quality of discourse that was taking place in mainly educational programs, such as often the very expensive and unregulated teacher training courses, and also in mainstream media. For example, at around this time, there were a lot of self-help articles on platforms such as Elephant Journal, which claimed 5 steps to my own self-defined enlightenment experience. And there were also more nuanced journalistic articles that started to appear by non-specialists, such as the scientist William Broad in the New York Times. He boldly attempted to discuss topics such as yoga and sex scandals, yoga wrecks your body, etc., without much historical context for his views. So I felt that there was room for a better quality of knowledge sharing and embarked to build a platform which could support the yoga community, in particular yoga studio owners, teachers and trainers, by offering an independent and non-commercial resource. So the open access ethos is an important aspect of the initiative, as it encourages the sharing of knowledge between academic and practitioner communities, breaking through economic and educational barriers. So since its beginnings, the Luminescent has expanded to collaborate with world-leading experts in the field of yoga, Sanskrit and Indology, in an effort to unlock their knowledge for the use of by the wider public. Another interesting initiative that I'm excited to share with you is that I'm currently producing a documentary film in collaboration with the Hatha Yoga Project, which aims to bring to life the 18th century yoga of the Hatha Abhyasa Paddhati. This is a manual on Hatha Yoga. Dr. Jason Birch stumbled across a manuscript of this text during one of his field trips in 2012. And it's a very exciting find, as it provides the only sequential asana routine that has been preserved in a pre-modern manuscript. The asanas, many of which are based on the movements of animals, are divided into 6 sequences, as some of them involve repetitious movement, and they often require extraordinary strength and flexibility. So these asanas remain largely unknown by the modern yoga world, but nonetheless, they have contributed to the tradition of yoga at the Mysore Palace and influenced modern forms of yoga, extending from the teacher of Krishnamacharya. So we hope to offer a preview of this film at the up-and-coming World Sanskrit Conference in July later this year. So in this talk, I very much position myself as a yoga practitioner and enthusiast. Sorry, let me start again. 1, 3, 2, 1. So in this talk, I very much position myself as a yoga practitioner and enthusiast who is attempting to engage in a historically informed view of how modern globalized yoga as a phenomena may evolve in the future. I will share some of my personal reflections as a maturing teacher and touch on some of the cultural and social levers affecting yoga teachers and practitioners. At the same time, I hope to highlight some of the historical and contextual issues that are shaping the structures of modern globalized yoga. So firstly, the term modern globalized yoga was coined by Dr Elizabeth de Michelis to define the evolving international landscape of yoga, its ideologies and practices, which have moved beyond the national and transnational yoga typologies that are more often than not linked to a guru lineage pedagogy. Dr de Michelis presented her original thesis in the book The History of Modern Yoga in 2004. She built a typology of modern yoga which identified the now commonly used term modern postural yoga. Our understanding of the modern history of yoga is evolving rapidly, with the very important work of historians such as Joseph Alter, Carl Biber, Suzanne Newcomb, Andrea Jain, and Mark Singleton, to name a few, as well as the forthcoming work of doctoral researchers such as Philip de Slip, who is bringing to light important archival evidence about the time in which Eastern and Western ideas surrounding yoga first intermingled in America. Many yoga practitioners develop their understanding of yoga's history after initially learning a modern style of practice. If they undertake further study on theory, they are likely to be taught about texts such as Patanjali's Yoga Sutra and the Bhagavad Gita. They then have to try to make sense of a range of contemporary practices and teachings, which are mixed with pre-modern ones, while negotiating a wide range of views on the meaning of yoga. These views often reflect a particular positionality. For example, a neo-health professional who has incorporated a breathing exercise, pranayama, into a therapeutic relationship might be careful to present their view of yoga as secular, and that their choice of techniques is scientifically supported through evidence-based research. An Indian nationalist who sees yoga as integral to Hindu identity might emphasize a pre-modern textual source and interpret it in such a way that it supports their ideological view. Whereas a charismatic entrepreneur who has created their own brand of yoga to garner a following of loyal students may emphasize the idea of yoga as a set of self-help techniques that can empower an individual to achieve a personal goal, such as usefulness. So what is yoga? Historical research tells us that yoga has never been one thing, one practice, nor one path. Yoga as both practice, that is, a structured system, and a soteriological goal has been malleable. It is almost impossible to answer the question, what is yoga, in an absolute way. One can only provide meaningful answers to what yoga is when specific types and teachings on yoga are considered in their historical context. Over the centuries, the continued success of yoga has been in its ability to be different things to different people. Yet the common feature that has given yoga endurance over time has been the structures which offer an individual a set of practices that aim at an extraordinary psychosomatic experience or an altered outlook, which then transforms one's sense of self and one's relationship with the world. I'd like to run quickly through some of the varied definitions of yoga over the millenniums in order to point out some of these common themes while also noting the differences in approach. One of the earliest definitions of yoga is holding the senses steady in the 300 BCE Hata Upanishad. The context here is about controlling the senses, just as a charioteer has to control the horses pulling the chariot. It points to self-control that aims to shift one's attention away from the external world to discover a less volatile world within. Some 600 years or so later, yoga is defined as equanimity, samatvam, in action in the 3rd century Bhagavad Gita. Here, the context is a religious mindset in which a devotee of Krishna offers the fruits of actions to his Lord. The purpose of this yoga seems to be twofold. On the one hand, the devotee seeks to discover Krishna within by always contemplating him. On the other hand, the devotee can act effectively in the world because the focus is on the action at hand and not the outcome, whether it be success or failure. As concepts of yoga developed into more complex systems, yoga became both the method and the goal. This is seen in the Patanjali Yoga Shastra, where yoga is both the method, called samadhi, defined as cessation of mental activity, yogash chitta vritti nirodha, and the goal, in which an unchanging, eternal, aware aspect of oneself remains conscious of only itself. Tada drashtuhu svarupe avashtanam. The complexity of this system is that yoga is achieved by an eightfold method called Ashtanga, which has samadhi as its eighth component. To make the challenge of understanding it even greater, much of the philosophy and technical terminology of Patanjali's work derives from Buddhism and Sankhya, so a historian cannot study the Patanjali Yoga Shastra in isolation. Nonetheless, the emphasis of Patanjali's teaching is on meditation, and in contrast to the Bhagavad Gita, the worship of God is a small but optional, almost optional, component of it. The more common definition of yoga as union becomes a prominent feature during the rise of Tantra, which is a religion that flourished in India after the 7th century. It is during this time that initiation, complex systems of ritual, visualization, and mantra practice become important. Yoga was often integrated with ritual and mantra practices, but when it is defined in isolation, it aimed at uniting the practitioner's soul with the deity of worship. Meditation was still the focus of tantric yoga, but the notion of union brings in a greater emphasis on theistic teachings, and in particular the practice of visualizing a form of the deity. It's not until the 12th century when the yoga of force, Hatha yoga, emerges. That yoga becomes a system which preferences physical methods for achieving the aim of union. The system of Hatha yoga forces the success, so to speak, of an aspirant in achieving the state of meditative absorption, namely Raja Yoga, the king of all yogas. Hatha yoga was taught by many different sects, including esoteric Buddhists. So when interpreting the union of this type of yoga, the metaphysical framework of the text must be considered. Some express union as joining prana and apana, others as the sun and moon. Also mentioned is the Vedantic goal of uniting the individual self with the absolute. There are various methods to achieve the state of samadhi, and it seems Hatha yoga was more of an auxiliary method practiced by people of various traditions. In fact, the diversity within early Hatha yoga appears to have created a situation that is similar to the one seen today in modern globalized yoga. The author of the Hatha Pradipika, Svatmarama, stated that he wrote his anthology because people did not understand the goal they were confused by the multitude of conflicting opinions. Svatmarama's solution was to synthesize the various earlier traditions into one cohesive framework, which consisted of asana, pranayama, mudra, and samadhi. So why is the history of yoga important to a contemporary practitioner? First and foremost, it helps to clarify one's purpose for practice and navigate the many conflicting views about what yoga is. The value of studying yoga's history is that it enables us to trace back many of the threads that are being brought together and woven into modern styles of yoga. And although new interpretations of yoga have emerged in modern times, such as yoga therapy, the enduring themes of structured practice, such as posture, breathing exercise, and meditation, still persist. Another reason a contemporary practitioner may benefit from the study of the history is that the historical context of practices can assist in understanding the appropriate application of techniques and systems.